What's up, Ferchero fam? For tonight, going to the legendary Comedy Store. Unfortunately, I couldn't show you any footage from the last shot, especially when it comes to the Comedy Store. In most comedy events, they don't allow you to record, do any photos or videos while people are performing. As you can imagine, a lot of these comedians are actually, working on some new material, trying some new stuff out. So any video or photos or anything during the show is 100% banned. Now, I figured to close out this video, because I've done tons of other videos about the Comedy Store, I figured to close out this video with kind of a Comedy Store 101. A lot of people have hit me up saying, hey, Mark, I saw your other Comedy Store videos. What should I do for my first time going? Or other nitty-gritty little things that you should know about going to the Comedy Store. So I'm going to kind of break it down, what it's like going to the Comedy Store for the first time and things you should know. First off, make sure you get there early. When it comes to the seating, you don't really have assigned seatings. They do have VIP tables. So actually, if you have like 5 or 10 people with you, you want to get like your own private booth, you can do that. But for the most part, it's pretty much first come, first serve. So when you get there early and you get in line and you start to see the line lining up, it really depends. Sometimes it begins 45 minutes that people start lining up right before it. Other times even like an hour plus. So getting there early is always key. In addition, I love the Comedy Store bar outside the Comedy Store. It's kind of connected to it. And I've said this before in other videos. No joke, it's actually one of my favorite bars in the LA area. I don't know what it is, but something with like the vibe, the people, a lot of the comedians do hang out there too. So there's something with like that ambiance that I just love. So what I always typically do is I might get there, I'd say about an hour to an hour and a half before the show starts. I'll get there, I'll first go to that bar, grab a drink, and just kind of like, people watch, kind of sit and relax. I'll then start to eye the door to see when people start lining up. Now, there's mainly 3 different rooms for the Comedy Store. The belly room, the original room, and the main room. Now, the main room, as it sounds, is the main room. It's the one that you all hear about. That's the one that I had in this video. The other 2, the original room and the belly room, are connected inside the kind of the bar section of the Comedy Store. So if you're going to the main room, you can be lining up basically outside of the bar. When it comes to the original room and the belly room, it'll be almost inside the bar section. The bell room is basically around the end and around the back of the bar. So for me, especially for example for last night, I was basically eyeing, the front door. People started lining up pretty early. I'd say for last night, and it was a Saturday night I went, and obviously as you can imagine, on weekend nights, I find people get there a little bit earlier as opposed to weekday. So last night, I think people started lining up probably like 45 minutes before the show even started. There's already a decent amount of line there, actually, when I decided to get in line. Got in line, you basically wait. And one big thing I suggest, like I said, first come, first serve when it comes to seating, is if you want to sit close, obviously, no surprise, make sure you get there early, get a good spot in line. However, remember that if you do want to sit further back, you can still tell the person who's seating you to say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to lie, I'm not really in the mood to be up front. I just basically want to sit in back. Now, for me, I love sitting up front for mainly 2 reasons. 1, you're closer. No surprise there. But 2, the people sit up front typically are the ones who get interacted with. As you can imagine, stand-up comedy is a very interactive, creative field. And there are some comedians, for example, there was one last night who didn't do any jokes and just interacted with people in the crowd. That's all he did, And so he would either point at somebody and say, like, hey, like, what do you do? And kind of spin off some type of routine from that. Or B, they might just flat out just roast you. So if you're not in the mood to be interacted with, if you don't want to be roasted and trust me, like, don't get me wrong, it's fun, but I know some people maybe don't have the thick skin for it, because when they roast you, they usually go pretty intense. So just keep that in mind. So I just will say that. But let's say if you do get there early, when they go to sit you up front, you can't say, hey, look, I'm not going to lie, I'm not in the mood to be interacted with, I don't want to be roasted, I just want to sit back, relax, have a drink, have some food, and just watch a good show. Now, on to the drinking aspect, because in case you didn't know, this is a big kind of odd things, one of those odd things about comedy events that I didn't really know going to my first one, is that there's a huge staple for all comedy events of a 2-drink minimum. So when you go to the Comedy Store and you go inside and everything, you have to get minimum 2 drinks. Now, if, like, say, you're being sober, you're DD, or, like, say, you just don't drink at all, you can get waters, and that will count towards the 2-drink minimum, but that is something you kind of have to keep in mind. In addition, any drink that you get outside in the Comedy Store bar does not count towards that 2-drink minimum. So keep that in mind. Like, say, if you go outside, you grab a nice drink at the bar, you're drinking it, and then you go inside, you still have to get 2 other drinks on top of that. Kind of frustrating, annoying. It's kind of weird that happens with comedy events. Like, for me being a DJ, it's not like I ever go to an EDM event, and they're like, hey, you have to get 2 drinks at this music concert or festival, whatever, right? It's a very big staple of comedy events. In addition, unless it's like a massive special, like you're going to see this one comedian, for most comedy events, the main headliners will actually appear about halfway through the show, not at the end, right? As opposed to music, it's usually you have an opener, someone who's a little bit well known, and then you usually have like the headliner, the headliner of the music event closing out that event. With comedy, it's almost not necessarily the exact opposite, but very, very switched up. It's usually almost like a normal distribution curve, where at the beginning, you have a few nice acts, you have the peak act, or the best one, usually happening about the middle of the night. So for me last night, that was actually Tom Segura. Absolutely killed it, right? And then after that, slowly tails off into lesser and lesser known comedians. So, not only that's why I do suggest getting there early, because if you get there late, you might actually miss the main comedian of the night. But the second thing is that always close out your bar tab early. Like I said with the 2-drink minimum, what I like to do, right when the waitress comes over, and I have to give a huge shout out to the waiters and waitresses of the Comedy Store. It just seems like a nightmare working there. Like, I bet they love it, don't get me wrong, but they just have to do so much, and you'll see that for your first time going. So what I typically like to do is, right when I order a drink from one of the waiters or waitresses, I'll say, hey, I want these exact 2 drinks and maybe some food or whatever, and I'm closing out my card now. Is there any way I can give you my card and close it out whenever you got the chance? That way, whenever I want to leave, right, and make sure you never leave during a comedian's performance. To me, that's just very, very rude. Always wait, let's say if you're not feeling it, let's say you want to go home, just wait for them to end their set. When they go to bring on the next person, that's when you should leave, So that way, though, right when I close out my card, I don't have to worry about finding the waiter or waitress and get very hectic and tough. It's pretty tough, too, to kind of figure out, like, okay, while the show's going on, which was the guy or the girl that was kind of at our table? And, like, sometimes they will come back around, to get me wrong, but it's usually very infrequent. It's kind of random. Sometimes I haven't seen some for a couple hours. So close out your tab in the beginning of the night. I'm telling you, it's going to make your life a lot easier in the long run. And then lastly, I'd say to kind of, almost if I'm doing this as like a storyline, right, in terms of getting to the Comedy Store, then while the show's going on at the end, when the show finishes, I always love going back out to that bar and hanging out and just chilling there, because a lot of the comedians, like I said, will usually hang out there, and a lot of them, especially after the show, will be taking pictures, they'll be having drinks, they'll be interacting with fans, doing all that kind of stuff. And so I think that, especially at the end of the show, if there's one comedian that you saw that you really, really loved, makes you hang out at the outside bar. I mean, that's where I've met everyone from, Chris D'Elia to Jimmy Carr to Jim Jeffries, so on and so forth. And it's not just like this odd thing of meeting them, but they're usually hanging out, having a drink with you, and just chilling and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really, really cool environment, but hopefully that little brief explanation was helpful, kind of want to give you the whole Comedy Store 101 experience of what to do in terms of getting there, leading up to the show, being in the show, and then leaving. It's an amazing venue. Obviously, all the stories that you heard about the Comedy Store are 100% true. It is truly, you can make a big argument, it's honestly the most iconic comedy venue in the entire world. You can make a legitimate argument for that. So, hope this video was helpful. In addition to it, if you have any comments or questions about things like the Comedy Store, comedy events, and whatnot, definitely post them.